Victoria. I'm a home school mum of 5 in England. I have got 2 home education related videos coming up next, which will be my next 2 videos, or whereabouts. But this one's about something different, and I have put off making this video, but I'm just going to bite the bullet and do it. I put on here about 3 months ago that I was training to be a childminder with Tiney, training from home. I'll link it below if I remember, but if you're watching this, your chances are you've seen that one. And I'm not going to be a childminder now. People have been asking me, and I've been putting off answering them. People on my Patreon know what the whys and wheres, because I kind of keep it more up to date in real time. But yeah, I'm just going to bite the bullet and tell you why I'm not doing it. If you've seen that video, I was training from home to be a childminder with an agency called Tiney. The training, I haven't got a bad word to say about the training. It was £100. It was on an app on your phone. It was all very accessible. There was videos, there was little tests. It was very, pardon me, it was very easy to do and very engaging. And the bits about the EYFS, the early years, and sensory play and all that was stuff that I was really interested in. So I haven't got a bad word to say about the training. I finished the training. I enjoyed the bit about the EYFS, and I enjoyed the bit about feeding children and stuff. When it got on to safeguarding, I was a bit, because it was stuff like, if a child enters your house, any pre-existing injury, you've got to get, you know, any bruise anywhere, any scratch anywhere, anything, you've got to get a parent to explain why they've got that bruise and sign something so that they later can't say that you did it. So if you're changing a baby's nappy and there's a bruise, you've got to ring the parent immediately and find out where the bruise comes from so they can sign something to prove that you didn't. And that put me off a bit. But I understand why them things are in place, but it did put me off a bit. But I finished all the training, even the safeguarding. The only thing that was left for me to do was attend a safeguarding webinar and book my appointment for them to come and view my house. They were the only 2 things left to do. And I'd paid for an is it advanced extra, might be advanced, a DBS check, like a really thorough DBS check for me and my husband, and that cost me like 90 quid. So I paid 100 quid for the training, 90 quid for my DBS check, and then I had to pay 100 quid for a form that was 2 pages long from my doctors to say that there was nothing wrong with me to stop me looking after children. And all it was like a 2-page long form that I'd filled in, the doctor had just signed, because I was so angry that it cost me £100 for a doctor to sign something. So this was the other reason I didn't own up to the fact I'm not doing it now, because that's 290 quid I'd spent during a time when we was broke. And a lot of it I paid for on my Vinted account. I'd just sold so many things, clothing of mine, which is why I look like this, to pay for it. So we didn't go out of the money for the kids, but the fact that I'd spent 290 quid on something I wasn't going to do, I was ashamed of it. But in my defence, I was convinced I was going to do it. I was convinced this was my way out of being... My husband, if you're new here, my husband's always worked very hard, but he's currently too ill to work and we're on benefits. And I was like, this is our way out. I'm going to do this. So I'm trying not to be too hard on myself that I spent 290 quid on something I'm not going to do, because I genuinely thought I was going to do it. Genuinely thought this was our way out. And even now, I still think I would have been a good childminder. But the reasons I decided not to do it was, one, I was worried about this safeguarding business and how having somebody coming and judging my house and judging me all the time was going to affect me. 2, I was thinking, how am I going to do it all? How am I going to... I mean, I can look after other people's kids and do fun things with them, but how can I do it to a standard that Ofsted thing, as well as look after my 5 and a sick husband? And I was thinking I thought my husband would be a lot further along getting better by the time I was due to open, and he's just not well enough for parents coming in and out and kids coming in and out and Ofsted inspectors, Tiney inspectors, whatever, coming in and out. And I joined a lot of childminder groups on Facebook, and there was quite a few older childminders who's been doing it for years who had quit, and they were saying they was quitting because of how it is now, like the constant bureaucracy and guidelines and being judged and standards and constantly trying to get results out of kids for to please Ofsted and stuff. That put me off. And there were other childminders that were saying they were sick to death of chasing parents for money, and I thought, I can't be doing with that. And there were a lot of childminders saying about parents consistently sending the kids in ill, because I was thinking, you know, it's not just me that's going to catch it, it's all my kids are going to catch it every time someone sends a kid in ill. And there were a couple of cases of false allegations where a child had said something and it wasn't true, and even the parent thought it wasn't true, but because the kid had said it, they had to go along with. I mean, of course they do. I'm not calling that, but of course they have to take the child seriously, because of that one time it might be true, and you know how it is instantly shut down their business, and instantly no one will have out to do with them, and instantly people are suspecting it's them until they prove themselves that they didn't do anything. That put me off. So I'd already kind of thought maybe it's not the right thing. And then, and the other thing was, we was going to move house. We were swapping council houses with somebody else, and the other house, the house we was going to, was so much more better suited to childminding. So I had that in my head with my plan of how I was going to do everything, and that fell through. So we're still stuck here. It might have still worked, but not as much as it would have done the new property. But anyway, so I'd already kind of decided I weren't doing it, but because I'd spent so much money on it, and I still think I'd have been a good childminder, I wasn't ready to admit I wasn't going to do it. I thought maybe I'll still carry on, maybe. And then I was called to the job centre, and they said that they would help me with the setup of being a childminder, provided that I gave them receipts for everything, proved that everything I was buying was for the childminding business, and proved that I'd looked at other options to pick the cheapest thing and all that lot. But if I don't, because I've got a baby, if I don't set up as a childminder, I'm called into the job centre every 6 months. If I set up as a childminder, I have to go to the job centre every month for the first year. How the hell am I going to set up a business? All the things that go with childminding, because it's more than looking after kids, all the forms and the records and the bureaucracy and parents and chasing up fees and keeping and doing everything else I do as well, and look after a sick husband and go to the job centre once every month. And if I do nothing, I go every 6 months. Makes no sense to me at all. And I said to him, yeah, but what if the appointment you give me, I'm working? Oh, well, we'll try and fit round you. We'll try and do an appointment where you're not working. And I says, yes, but what if I'm always working? Because this was the other thing. To do with ratios, how many kids you're allowed to have, I was only going to be able to have 1 or 2 kids as well as my own, because I've already got 5 children. And realistically, managing them, I probably only could have had 1 other kid as well as my own at a time. So to make it worthwhile to make money, I'd have been constantly childminding, like constantly had another kid in the house. And I says, what if I'm constantly working? Oh, well, then you'd have to sort something out. So if I got a little Tarquin, and I'd only just got the contract to look after little Tarquin, and I said, look, I've either got to take him to the job centre with me, which isn't good, or I'm going to have to not look after him that day, even though I've said I can. It's not going to work, is it, doing that 12 times a year? No. So I'd already decided in my head I wasn't going to do it. And then I thought, well, I've already paid for it, and the first aid course came free in this £100. So I booked him for a first aid course, and I thought I might as well finish the training, because I'm that close to finishing it anyway, and I paid for it now. Get my paediatric first aid from a playgroup, because I run a playgroup on a Wednesday. And then I get an email off Tiney. And by the way, Tiney wanted 10% of my earnings. So even if, and I was alright with that because I needed the guidance as a new childminder, but even here in the job centre was like 10%. So they were quite willing to take 10% from me. They sent me a message and they said even though I'd passed my DBS check, my advanced DBS check, they were not going to go ahead with my application because sensitive information had come to light. So I rung them up and said, what? They said, right, let me just backtrack a minute. Somebody rung social services on me a couple of months ago. I was in the library with my kids and this random woman who I had less than a minute conversation with rung social services on me. Social services rung me up and said they'd spoke to the librarian who had no concerns about my kids, so they weren't even going to bother coming out. They'd just rung me to make me aware of it. And I said, well, I'm glad you've rung me actually, because I'm training to be a childminder and I'm a little bit worried that all the times I've had social services rung on me, because I've had them rung on me about 4 or 5 times now, every single time it's been proved to be malicious, and every single time social services come out and said, your kid's fine, they've gone again. It's never gone no further. I says, I'm a bit worried that's going to go against me. And the social worker actually said to me, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. People are petty, aren't they? We've never, had any reason to come out beyond the initial assessment. Enjoy your childminder training, right? So I thought, fine. Anyway, I rung Tiney up, and this girl, she sounded about 12. This girl, she says to me, it's come to light about you having social services rung on you and the state of your house. And I says, yeah, but it's been proved that that wasn't true, because every time social services have been, they've gone away happy again. Yes, well, you'd need a letter from social services to say that. And I'm like, yeah, but you've already seen that on my records, that they've not come out again. So one, that shows you how they drop you like a hot brick as soon as you got a false allegation or anything like that. They wouldn't be remotely on your side. It'd just be like, deal with it, prove that you're innocent, and then come back to us when you're ready to give us more 10% of your money. And I said, I spoke to social services a couple of months ago and they said it wouldn't be a problem, enjoy your childminder training. And they were like, well, I'm sorry you've been given false information, but it's a thanks but no thanks from us. You could try Ofsted or a different childminder agency, they might take you on, but we're not willing to. And I was like, I haven't done anything. And then they was like, yeah, well, the only way we'd go through your application if you got this letter from social services just reaffirming that they never took it further. And I did actually ring social services, but I was on hold for about an hour and a half, and by then the kids were whapping. I thought, sod this, and just put the phone down, because but I was quite upset for a couple of days. That's why I only put about it on my Patreon. I haven't, and that's another reason I've put off putting it on here for tonight, because it just upset me that folk, I haven't done anything, and folk can ring up social services and tell lies about you, and even when it's proved it's lies, it still goes against you. And I was a bit worried that, you know, I mean, I'd like to be a nursery nurse one day or something. Is it going to go against me? But anyway, I think that's God's blessing. That's a good thing that I'd already decided in my head I wasn't going to do it. Because can you imagine if I decided I was going to do it and in my heart was set on it, and I've spent more money buying the fire blanket and all the other safety things you need to be a childminder, and then they'd drop me. So it's good that I'd already decided not to do it, but it was still quite upsetting. But yeah, but I might be doing something else now, but I'm not going to say what it is yet in case that falls through as well. But so I'm moving my hands a lot in this vlog. I don't know why. It's because I'm nervous. I'm worried I'm going to get judged because of why they dropped me, even though I haven't done anything. So I've just sworn. I've just sworn now. I'm stressed and I'm upset about this thing. What was I going to say? Right. Sorry, I'm sorry I swore. This is why I've put off making this video for so long, because I knew I'd get... Anyway, a woman I know lives down there. I saw her yesterday and she says, are you still doing childminding? And I said no, and she says, why? And I told her everything, the social, everything. And she went, oh, that's a shame, because she goes to work, her husband stays at home, but he's on about getting a job as well. And she says, oh, that's a shame, she says, because when my husband gets a job, pardon me, we was hoping you'd have our daughter for an hour after school. And I says, well, legally, if it's 2 hours or below, I don't have to be a registered childminder. I said, so if I'm only having her for an hour, we could maybe have a private arrangement, but I can't do Wednesdays. And she says, oh, lovely, we might do that then. She says, because round here, I trust you to mind my kid for an hour after school, which I thought, that meant a lot. So we'll see about that. But yeah, that's why I'm not doing childminding. And please forgive me for swearing, but it still cuts a bit. But I still think I'd have been a good childminder. I maybe, like so many other things in my life, I'd have been better doing it 20, 30 years ago, before the modern world took over. When I was little, and I had a friend whose mum was a childminder, and in them days it really was just a case of minding kids, playing with them, feeding them, making sure they were all right. It really was just a case of minding kids. Now it's all this bureaucracy, and you've got to safeguard yourself as well as the kid, because somebody might say, so yeah. And I had a name as well. I had a name for my childminding business, because to work with Tiney, you had to have the name Tiney in the title. So I was going to call mine Tiny Teapots Childminding, and I picked that because one alliteration, Tiny Teapots, thought it went nice together. And also, when we was going out, the husband used to look at me, like, 'cause he fancied me, he used to look at me, and I used to go, what? And he used to go, teapot. So, right, if you're still here, if you haven't unsubscribed because I've swore, and yeah, I've been dropped from a childminding agency. I'll see you next time, my loves.